Baseball season is almost amongst us. This Reds team is looking pretty good, but I think there is three keys to this team making postseason this season. Starting off with number one being Iglesias needing a bounce back season. Last season, he had a 4.16 ERA, a 1.22 whip, a 3-12 record, the worst slash of his career by a mile and a half, but he's been a very good pitcher for the Reds over the years, and I think he is more than capable of bouncing back this season. And even with that kind of down year, which does happen for pitchers, let's be completely clear here. It's not like it's the first time a pitcher had a bad year and that's it. I think a bad or a down year can happen. He can bounce back this year. But even with that down year, he still finished with 12 strikeouts per 9 innings and only allowing 21 walks, which were both career best for him. So even though he struggled last year, at the same time, he still did not have a lot of control issues, and he still did a very good job of getting guys to swing and miss. So there's something good to take out of Iglesias' season last season, I still think here. And I do think it, when you look at a guy like Iglesias, you can also think it may be a little bit of a managerial problem he ran into as well last season. Being a closer, I cannot stress enough, is a completely different monster than any other pitching role as a pitcher in baseball, because you're coming into the ninth inning, the game is almost always on the line. It's an adrenaline rush. It's a different feeling than coming in the eighth or coming in the 10th or coming in the first or the second or third. You get the point, and you're used to coming in for that one inning and being done. And now you're seeing guys like Iglesias last season, for example, when he went out last season and pitched more than one inning, he did it 10 times. In those 10 outings, he allowed runs in half of those appearances. That is not good, and then you talk about, that doesn't even include when he came out in the 8th or when he came out when it was a 5-run game or he came out in the 7th. Don't be fancy with your closer. I know it sounds like an excuse, but when you get so acclimated to coming in the 9th, in those pressure-packed situations, it's different when you come out in the 8th or when you come out pitch an inning and then you come back out for a second inning. Again, I know it's an excuse, but it's something that it really does affect a lot of closers in the league. And it's something I think that comes back to David Bell here, though, is playing his players to their strengths. We've got plenty of guys in this bullpen that can get to the 9th inning, and then you bring in Rysell to close the door. You look at like last September, he came out in every appearance in September. He only pitched 1 inning. He only allowed runs once. One time did he allow runs, and for the most part, it was all save situations for him. Again, you see the difference when he gets, he gets settled down, he gets feel comfortable, he plays well. We've seen that again more in the latter of last season. If Bell continues that way, I think Iglesias has a great season. Second's good defense. You look at this team, Shogo, Moose, you got Castellanos, all these guys the Reds brought in this offseason. They're going to have to find a place into this lineup or a place on the field. We already know Moose is going to move to second base, where he's only played 47 times in his entire career. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does there. I think he'll be all right. He proved to be all right last season when he did play those games at second base. But you have to assume there's going to be a lot of jostling in that outfield until these Reds find the 3 guys they want to stick with throughout the season, which is, again, concerning from a defensive standpoint. I don't think we should be too concerned about it, but at the same time, if there's one thing this Reds team in general you could worry about, you look at the pitching side, fantastic. The offense looks great. But one thing that can derail a team still is their ability to field. And if the Reds struggle with that this year, it could be something that ultimately plagues their season. So if they can avoid that, which I think they can, they'll be in very good shape. And the final key here is how David Bell manages this team. I think it's very important that this Reds team starts this season off hot. They get the ball rolling. You look at the last 2 seasons. Last season, the Reds started 12-17. The season before, they started 3-18. Not good. You get that, bitter taste in your mouth early. And when you look at all these new faces on this team, a lot of guys expecting to win, you want to see them get hot early. You don't want to see what happens if this team gets off to a slow start, how the mindset, how the mentality of the team could possibly change. Sure, they could be a resilient bunch, bounce back and play great, but why take that chance? You invested so much into this season. You want to see these guys get hot early. And I think you got to, look at David Bell to hopefully spark these guys. Hopefully, again, play these guys to their strengths. Get the guys out there that are playing well. I can't stress enough how important it is, not only for these guys to start the season hot, but for David Bell to stick with the hot hand. We see it so many times where a guy will go 4 for 4 or 3 for 4 and he gets benched the very next night. You gotta let the guys play when they're hitting the ball well, and it's one of those cases for the Reds. I think David Bell needs to take that P word, platoon, the worst word in baseball. Let me tell you, I'm gonna say it, the worst, platoon. Take it out of the vocabulary. I know there's 5 really good outfielders on this team that could all play, But if there's 3 of them hitting the cover off the ball, you can't say, hey, Senzel, you're batting 400 in the last week. We're going to bench you today. We'll play the next 2 games. We're going to bench you again. None of that. You can't have the 2 to 3 off days a week type of thing, especially for these young guys. They can play 160 games a year. They don't need to have off 162 really, but they don't need these off days. It's a momentum killer, if you ask me. You get into that rhythm, you get into that groove. Baseball is a streaky sport for a lot of guys, and you go out there and bench the guy every other night or something. It's hard for them to stay consistent and continue to ride that streak. So it's going to be important to see David Bell properly manage these ABs for guys this season. He's got a lot of weapons to work with. How he manages them is going to be a big key to the way this Reds offense produces this season. It's going to be interesting. Pretty excited to see the way the Reds play this season. It's looking pretty good.